Let's talk about the process of constructing a survey questionnaire. Excuse me. Now, the things to think of, this will deal mainly, I'll just simply describe the process. In segments to come, we'll step through the actual process itself and go into detail. But this one just goes over the process. Now, things to think about is that survey design is like the design of anything. It needs to consider the requirements, then design the survey to meet those requirements. It's not a muddle through, discover it all. You can actually plan it out and do it properly. Is the full design process needed for all surveys? I'm sorry, you're asking the wrong person. My answer is yes, it is. There's the full process listed out there. It starts with reviewing the information requirements, developing a prioritized list of potential survey questions, which is probably badly explained, and I'll deal with that in some detail. Evaluate each potential survey question, determine the type of question to be asked, decide the specific wording of a question, determine the structure of the questionnaire, and evaluate the questionnaire. So that roughly is the sequence of things that you do. Now the requirements, same as everything else. What information is needed for your research question or hypothesis? And what are you trying to prove? What information do you need to show that or to examine that? And then what terminology are you going to use? Because it depends on the audience a bit. What are the underlying theories, constructs or frameworks? There could be existing theories or constructs or frameworks out there, and you're probably going to have to use them. Now, having to construct a framework yourself is just more work. Now, who in the community is likely to be able to provide the information you want? In other words, what's your sample? Where are you going to get your information from? That makes a difference to how you can construct a survey. I mean, if you're actually asking things about that people spread across the planet might answer, then you're probably not going to be able to visit them in person. That makes a difference. Consider construct validity, and in particular, what else could explain the results? And this is the usual thing. You ask a whole bunch of questions, you get a collection of answers, and you say, "Yep, that proves it." Well, it might not. Also, it could be that you just coincidentally found something that's spuriously related to something. So, one of the things to consider is that you're asking information to prove something. Possibly, you could ask information that could also disprove that, so that you can confirm. If you are unable to disprove it, but you are able to prove it, then you've got a very strong claim to validity. And I must admit, it's not something that occurs to anybody to do, but it's very good. Information requirements. An example is, and this is from my PhD, what I wanted to do was examine what project managers did all day, because it didn't match what the book said. It turned out that what I was looking at was projects in process, projects that were happening, whereas what the books deal with in project management is largely project planning, because that's where a lot of the information is. So what I was looking at in industry wasn't what the book said, so I wanted to know how do project managers actually deal with that. And when it got down to it, the question that I was trying to examine was, what mechanisms do project managers use to control, monitor and coordinate their projects? Well, now we have some interesting things to do, because the question of, well, what's a mechanism? And what's control, and what's coordinate, and what's monitor? So we have a few things to explain. But given that basic question, we can get over that. And then became, do project managers use different mechanisms when the distance increases between the project manager and the people on the project? Now this was related to a growing tendency toward distributed projects, particularly in software development, distributed and outsourced projects. And the question was, well, do they change what they do if the people are not in the same room? The short answer was no, they didn't. The dimensions of this particular information requirement is project management mechanisms, the different types of these that were used. The uses of those mechanisms, so it's not only what kind of thing they use to get the information. So how did they monitor the project? Did they get status reports each week, or did they get written reports? Did they get verbal reports? Did they walk into the room and have a look at the pizza box metric, or what did they do? So what was the mechanism that they used, and how did they use that mechanism? And distance between people in the project is not as simple as so many miles, because you could be organizationally quite distant, or you could be culturally quite distant. So organizationally distant is, in some organizations, unless you belong to the same division, then it's quite difficult to actually go and talk to them. And it's probably easier just to ring up your friends in some other country than it is to go and talk to somebody in a different division of the company. So there was distances there. So that was the type of information I had to go and wrestle with before I could construct my survey. So what were the mechanisms, what were the uses of those mechanisms, and what was the concept of distance? Now, an example of a poorly focused questionnaire was, how do organizations improve their processes? Again, I was involved in this particular project, and I have to say, it wasn't that we were sloppy. There were about 10 or 12 people involved in the project, and the questionnaire itself had gone through, I think, 16 revisions. So it wasn't that we were hasty, it wasn't that we were being very unprofessional, it's just that we were not particularly well focused. The question was, how do organizations improve their processes? When we got the information back, what came out was that respondents didn't know what was considered to be an improvement. That's the first thing. Was this only formal process improvement that came out of something like the CMMI or SPICE, formal process assessment with a formal process improvement program, and was it only things that they did? Or did it include all the little things we do all day? Which, well, how do I know what I've done? So that was a bit of a problem. Were some agile process improvement methods included? Now, in agile software development is fairly big on retrospectives. And in a retrospective, the whole point is to sit around and think, well, why didn't it go so good? And how are we going to do it next time? Is that a process improvement? Well, it might be, because the change might be a change to a checklist. Well, is that part of the process or not? Is that a process improvement? Could be. Now, was the focus on the method or the implementation of the improvement? So, anyway, you get the whole thing. If your research question is poorly focused, your survey will also be poorly focused. So it's a problem. What could we have done better? In that circumstance, we could have come up with various hypotheses and tested those. And there's a whole list of them there. The hypothesis, first hypothesis, processes are changed in response to environmental changes. So we could ask about what changed in the environment, and did that set off a change in the process? A second hypothesis, the formality of process changes will match the formality of the processes. So if the processes themselves are informal, probably the changes are going to be informal too. But if the processes themselves are quite formal, that is, they're fully documented and they're fully ISO 9001 compliant, and all the formality, then the change is probably also going to be formal, with a change panel and approvals and education program, the whole thing. Third hypothesis, formal process improvements will favour changes to work instructions or work product templates and checklists. So there will be, if the processes are formal, there will be some formal trail you can go and see where the improvement has had some effect. Fourth hypothesis, we could have said improvements will target quality, process reliability, cost and process responsiveness. Now we go on to see how many changes did in fact do that, with obviously the danger that people wouldn't necessarily think of anything else as a change or an improvement. A fifth hypothesis, process improvements will differ between national cultures. Now there's always an interesting question about what happens between different national cultures, and I'm sorry to say that in IT so far there has not been a significant difference between national cultures in any of the IT processes. So that's if you can find one, go for it. Everybody always thinks there ought to be one. When we come down to it, there's not much. So in summary then for this one, if the requirements for the survey are vague, the survey itself will be vague. So take the time to think about what you want the survey to achieve.